Soul Shot Portrait Project envisions a community free from gun violence by using the transformative power of art. We pair fine artists with loved ones of victims of gun violence. The artist meets with the family and friends to learn about the life lived. They look at photos, videos, memorabilia, and hear the all-important stories. The portraits resulting from these collaborations are as unique as the souls were in life. The portraits honoring and memorializing these souls are presented in exhibitions that travel to various host venues for one full year. They have been viewed by hundreds, if not thousands of people. The exhibitions are hosted by art galleries, universities, houses of worship, libraries, art centers, museums, hospitals, and government buildings, including Philadelphia City Hall and the state capitol. Our newest Philadelphia exhibition is currently at the Presbyterian Church of Chestnut Hill. Our New Jersey exhibition is currently at Newark Public Library. And we have an exhibition of portraits from victims, excuse me, throughout the state that will open at the Susquehanna Art Museum in Harrisburg in January. Also notably, which I think some of you know about, the last stop for our exhibition of Philadelphia portraits from last year is currently at Einstein Medical Center on Old York Road. And the trauma intervention program there invited us to show, and they presented a beautiful program in support of the project in honor of their trauma and ER staff. Through this powerful artwork, we bring some solace to those who grieve, and we move viewers to take action. The exhibitions are an invitational rather than confrontational approach to the issue of gun violence. Art blazes a specific trail to hearts and minds, and by focusing on the lives lived, our portraits form deep connections with viewers. They reach a place of empathy where true change can take place. This project began in 2016 as an idea for a 1-month-long exhibition in support of gun violence awareness. And 6 years later, we have worked with over 150 artists, memorialized many, many souls, which are still a small fraction of the actual number of victims of gun violence. Participation is free, as are the exhibitions. And on our website, soulshotportraitproject.org, we provide resources for connecting people with ways to take action and services for those who grieve. Also on our website are instructions on how to participate as an artist, family member or friend, host or volunteer. You can also purchase our full color catalogs of images and commentary or make a donation. We are entirely volunteer run except for a part-time administrative assistant. And this is my full-time unpaid job. I would like to read a quote from a visitor to one of our exhibitions. As they walked in and saw the portraits, I overheard them say, "It's like you're speeding down the highway, every day hearing and reading about all the gun violence. It's too fast to really take in. This exhibition makes you slow down and notice." We hope to continue to slow people down, and to move them to take action and work towards peace. So I'd like to share some of the portraits that have appeared in our exhibitions over the last 6 years. This first images are a portrait of Daryl V. Singleton, and it's entitled "Remember When We Were Together" by the artist Mary Adelman. Mary met many, many times with Daryl's family and made lots and lots of images from the photos they shared, but she also had each of the family members come and sit in her studio, and she drew them in many, many different ways. This was her way of getting to know who Daryl was. And I mentioned this portrait in particular, because this is sort of an obsessive example of what we artists go through, but it's basically what happens. Typically, we would have photos just taped up all around in our studios. And I know I'm speaking for most of the artists, we end up talking to the person, and it's a very emotional, spiritual connection that we make with the people that we're representing. Anyway, Mary went on to make many images of Daryl, and in the end, these are 3 of them. In the end, we decided to make a giant collage, which was probably, I think it was 12 images. So it was about 10 feet by 12 feet, I think. Each of the images show Daryl with backgrounds referencing his interests, his dreams, his promise. They are created on Pellon, which is a non-woven material with ink and paint. I'm probably going to give you way too many art references here. There we go. This portrait is called Gray Stripe Mammoth Sunflower for Audra. And the artist Monique Sarkeesian chose to represent Audra in this way to symbolize her personality. She was very exuberant and joyful person. And she also happened to be the niece of the artist, and her life was taken in a case of domestic violence. The artist Constance Brady visited Mario Pedro's mother, Cheryl, and her family, and chose to represent Mario by the items the family had assembled on their mantle. The painting, titled Cheryl's Hearth, Kareem's Seat, is Mario's mantle, is deliberately left unfinished, as was Mario's young life. The partial inclusion of the clock at the top is also a reference to the short time he had with his loved ones. This painting is very large, and it's very effective. Guy Anthony Green is depicted here with his young child in the portrait titled An Untold Story by Karen Shechtman Cole. She used acrylic, collage, charcoal, and importantly, encaustic, which is a wax-based paint. The wax serves as a preservative, preserving the image and symbolically Guy and his legacy. Also, she encouraged the family to touch the portrait and feel the waxy surface, which becomes warm as it is handled. And it's truly magical when you can feel the surface of this work. Joe Brenman, the artist, created this beautiful collage, which is like a paper mosaic, to represent Dwayne Eric Green. His mother, Darnetta Green Mason, was constantly fearing that the prevalence of guns would mean disaster for her son. And sadly, she was correct. Since then, she has chosen to take action through her grief by joining Mothers in Charge, which is a Philadelphia-based gun violence awareness activist group. Joe described Darnetta as, quote, very inspiring in a quiet, forceful way, unquote. This portrait is by Christopher Hardgrove, and it's one of our most evocative. The artist worked with acrylic on t-shirt fabric to create the portrait of Justin Reyes. And I just love the way the cross marks seem to float in front and behind of his face like a sheer curtain. While we charge the artists with celebrating the lives and not focusing on the deaths, many artists do find ways to make subtle reference to the transitional space between the world, this world, and the next. I believe this composition accomplishes that. There's also, if you turn the portrait around. There's the pattern continues on the back. I believe this, I also notice a reference to a sunrise and sunset on either side of his forehead. David I. Walker is a photographer and storyteller, and one of the very few photographers we have worked with, simply because subjects are usually not with us anymore. He chose to photograph Sharon Hill, sister of Stephen, and include her words both on the photos and in a recording of her speaking about him. The portrait was accompanied by a QR code and an MP3 player when it was on view, so that viewers could access her words. I'm sorry that it's not available anymore, otherwise I would have brought it to play for you. But Sharon is an extremely exuberant person and laughs easily. And as she remembers her brother on the recording, one of her remarks that just slays me every time is she talks about how he would come over to her house and take over the couch and steal the remote. This is a portrait of the first female police officer to die in the line of duty in Philadelphia. Her name was Laretha Baird. And this portrait is called The Guardian in Blue, and it is by Johnny Castro. Castro is the forensic artist for the Philadelphia Police Department. And he, on his own time, he creates these digital paintings in honor of fallen or wounded officers and gives a copy to the families. This was the second portrait that he made for us. This is an interactive portrait that I actually created with batik on wool and some collage. It's called Zaza Man, Future Leader. This is a portrait of Zaki Alford, and I worked with Sonia Dixon, his grandmother, and his brother Kenyon to get to know who he was. He had just completed a leadership program only to be shot and killed just before the graduation ceremonies. This piece references many aspects of his life, and there are flaps that you can lift up and doors to open, and I could explain it all, but it would take a long time. At any rate, it's like I said, it's interactive. So sadly, I worked with Sonia again the very next year to create a portrait of Kenyon, his brother. He was shot while shepherding some children to safety during a drive-by shooting in their neighborhood. And I should also just add that when I first met Sonia and was learning about who Zaki was, when I talked to Kenyon, he seemed just a very, it was just very dark. He just barely spoke with me, and he was clearly upset about losing his brother. And then later, when I had to talk to Sonia again about him and met some of his friends, the picture of who he was completely different. And it just brought, he was, fun loving and outgoing. And it just struck me how much a shooting affects not just one person, but it really changes the whole family dynamic. And in this case, the neighborhood. Rachel Reinhardt made this gorgeous stained glass portrait called Beautiful Soul to honor Linwood Bowser II. Artist Shenawa McDonald worked with mother Kimberly Kamara to make Naeem's Crown of Life. This is a portrait of Naeem K. Johnson Tate. The artist attached jewels to each of the points of his crown to indicate how many lives were saved by the gift of his organs. Kimberly tells the story that when he went to get his first driver's license, he wanted he insisted on becoming an organ donor, and she was not having it. She completely objected, and he went and did it anyway. But now she is very proud of his selfless choice. Kimberly has also become quite active in another organization that brings attention to these victims called the Philadelphia Obituary Project. One of Philadelphia's most accomplished portrait painters, Garth Herrick, created this portrait of William Bethel IV. He used images from William's Facebook page videos of him riding his bike. The central image is a still from a video. The next frame of that video shows William flashing a huge smile, showing a mouthful of braces. It's truly heartbreaking. He was a child. Garth also intentionally left, I don't know if you can see the wood grain that comes through, he intentionally left an unfinished feel to the portrait to indicate the life that wasn't finished. The life of Shelton Hayes is chronicled in this interactive sculpture by Tim Thorton. Tim worked with Shelton's mother, Rhonda Gore, to learn about him, and he made every single detail of this amazing work connect in some way to Shelton's life. The artist is part of a group of Philadelphia artists called Dumpster Divers, by the way. And he found each of the items he found for this sculpture, as I said, have a meaning. And so the image on the left is the piece closed, and then when you open it, you see all the butterflies, which represent members of his family. This is another interactive sculpture which was created by Maya Reed, who's actually a student here, medical student. And it is a portrait of her mother, Vida Myant, who was shot and killed by her father. It's both a tribute and a memory box. This is one of the very few portraits that we have exhibited of a survivor of gun violence. Diamond Santiago was caught in a crossfire at age 13. She's 16 in this portrait by Lauren Vargas, titled 16 Marigolds, Diamond. This is, by the way, a little bigger than life size. It's just an incredibly beautiful, joyful portrait. Lauren and Diamond had become friends, and Diamond agreed to have her portrait made in order to be able to tell and own her story. She purposely posed with her wounded abdomen showing, and she also speaks publicly about her ordeal, which includes, over the years, multiple surgeries, missing massive amounts of school, and crippling depression. She's really an amazing young woman. Laura Frazier created this beautiful portrait of Troy Smith Jr. She's one of only a few sculptors that we have worked with, and it just amazes me that sculptors are able to work with two-dimensional reference material and come away with these incredible works. This is currently at Einstein. This portrait is by Mary Brady Begnardi, and it's of Tiana Nicole Valentine Eatman. And I remember reading about her murder when it happened. She was one of the rare victims of a shooting that was actually named and written about in the news media. She had just opened her own salon, and I learned from looking at her social media that she was exuberant, colorful, and excited about her new chapter. This portrait to me communicates all of that. It's a bittersweet reminder of what she did not get to finish or enjoy. This is also, it's a an under glass painting, which has an extra vibrancy to it when you see it in person. And by the way, I should say, the power of our exhibitions are seeing the artwork in person. It's much, and I'm sure all of you know that it's a whole different experience. For this last image, I would like to read a poem written by the artist, Evangeline, I can never pronounce her last name, Bragatikos, I think it is. The portrait features cousins, best friends, who were killed a year apart. They were Aaron Turner and Byron Wilkins. And the title of the portrait and the poem is Kings. Kings. Did you know that we were kings looking at you from the mountaintops as the rivers drain from the endless source? Did you know that we were ping pong champions, creating an infinite natural symphony with balls flying and falling, energizing and exploding? Did you know that we were master mechanics, taking in the broken, worn, and defective, making them new again, lacing their spokes, tightening the wheels, making them new, making them true? Did you know that Byron was the older one, outgoing, outspoken, and confident, the protector? Did you know that Aaron was the younger one, laid back, cool and quiet, mama's boy? Did you know that our favorite color was red? Stacy knew, Aaron knew, Janice, Erica, Ebony, Ava, and Stephanie knew. What did it take for you to know that we were kings? When we see you and we see kings and queens, all from the endless source. This is hard. Finally, I would like to congratulate the winners of the Yeo Prize. As I read the account of a victim of a robbery who was a shining example of making the best of a terrible situation, it made me think about the many family members I have met through the past years who, in spite of never-ending grief, have started foundations and organizations in memory of their loved ones. They've gone on to finish a degree, have become activists, all in the hopes of preventing more violence. As I read the essay bemoaning the lack of common sense requirements for owning and operating a gun, I felt that it should be in the hands of every government official in the entire country. The essay describing the immense damage that comes from such a small hole is more than a physical description. It's a metaphor for the ripples of emotional damage that spread through a family, a community, and beyond, from one small hole. I also thought about the tremendous amount of work, equipment, and resources needed to save, or even attempt to save, a life from a senseless act. The victims that we represent with our artworks were shot for stupid reasons: a perceived slight, mistaken identity, accident, caught in a crossfire, jealousy, road rage, domestic violence. It is the guns. In each case, there was a gun handy, an easy, quick solution to whatever the issue was, an irreversible act that takes a split second. So congratulations again to you writers, and I hope that our continued efforts as artists will be effective in enlisting more and more people in this quest.